Welcome to the Exploring the Vintage NFT Space podcast with Zero G. I'm very excited to have Ken from PixelMap with us today. Hey, Ken.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you today. Got a lot to talk about in the NFT space, and you're one of the major OG creators back in the Ethereum world. So, good times.
Yeah, it's right place, right time.
Yeah, it's amazing to how things worked out, having such an important project, on right now the biggest de facto platform for NFTs, biggest marketplace, biggest number of NFTs, all of that. But before we get into that, let's chat a little bit about your background in crypto. First off, when did you first hear about crypto? And then, after you heard about it, like what was it that actually intrigued you enough or convinced you enough to actually buy into it too?
That is a really good question. So I know for a fact it was before 2012. I don't know when. The reason I say that is because in 2012, like on the Bitcoin Talk forums, I can still see my post there where at that point I had convinced I was a system admin at this like very small insurance company, and I convinced them to be the first one to accept Bitcoin for an insurance policy, which took like a long time to convince them to do that. And I'd already been pretty active with Bitcoin, so I know it was before that. But for me, it was really just I don't know, like I've always loved programming, and it was just such a neat concept. Like it's to have like a fully decentralized currency was just like, for me, it was just a really neat thing to get into. So I actually thought back then, if you talked to me, I would have been positive that like right now, if you went shopping, you would be paying for everything with Bitcoin. So I was definitely not right. But it's also done quite a bit more than a lot of people thought as well. So it's been a, I don't know, very interesting. But yeah, around 2012 or a little before that.
Yeah, I see. I had the similar conviction back then. I thought it would be used in day-to-day commerce, and obviously that hasn't panned out. But yeah, so it was really like the decentralized aspect, and the fact is, you can program with it too. That really kind of intrigued you to kind of jump on board.
I would say the first part would be the decentralization. The other part would be like being able to mine it. I thought was
Mhm.
extremely cool. I have tried to mine countless times and I've never been successful, but just being able to try to do that, I thought was really neat. It wasn't until I saw Solidity with Ethereum that I started thinking like, oh, you can really code unique things with it. It wasn't that you couldn't do it with Bitcoin necessarily. It was just like it hadn't hit me yet. All the things that you could do with it.
Yeah, I was similar. I was following Bitcoin early on, and I was actually waiting for Butterfly Labs to release their. I was gonna buy a Bitcoin miner back then. I was gonna get a Butterfly Labs one when they, of course
The
they.
first, was that the first ASIC or ASIC?
No, they weren't the first, but they were gonna release the super efficient like series of ASICs, and they basically got delayed, and then they just I think they were caught, if I'm remembering this right, I think they were caught mining them before they were even available to
Oh my
sell.
gosh.
Yeah, and then they went anyway. Long story short, ended up going bust, and I don't think anyone got the they were released publicly. But so that ended my like what would have been my foray into Bitcoin mining. But yeah, it's like you, I didn't follow I didn't know about NFTs back then until Ethereum. Even though that, in retrospect, we've got Counterparty was on Bitcoin, and we have the Namecoin stuff too. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. When did you hear about Ethereum though?
Um, I don't know the exact time. I'm almost certain it would have been sometime in 2016 or maybe no, that's not true. I knew about it when like it was first being created, where they were like where you had the I forget what the crowd sale thing was called.
Yeah. Mhm.
At the time when that was first announced, though, I was what you would call like a Bitcoin maxi. I did not think that another blockchain would have like any chance whatsoever. It wasn't until some point in 2016 that I became interested in that, and that was probably after reading like a Reddit post or something about the smart contracts. So, and I know it was before November, obviously. It probably wasn't that long before that. I remember PixelMap taking me, I want to say it was a little over a month that I worked on it, and it would have been one of the like first things that I did with Ethereum because I was really wanting to see like how it worked, and that was kind of my like hello world contract to learn how it works.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of that's an interesting hello world, you know?
Yes, yeah, it was. I don't know. Like I just thought I thought it'd be a good way to learn without being too complex. Like it's a really simple concept where you just have these squares that you can customize. So it was the simplest thing I could think of that wasn't too simple. Like I didn't want it to be a literal hello world because there's nothing to it. But yeah, it was very interesting.
I have to admit I was like you. I did see on like Cointelegraph or something like when the pre-sale for Ethereum was going on, and I was too stingy. I didn't want to like spend an entire Bitcoin, like risk an entire Bitcoin, and
Yes.
the regret is real.
Yeah, it's
And then my other regret is I didn't follow Ethereum really. I was following more of the um, I didn't really learn about what Ethereum could do after that until much later. I was more into the kind of like you. I was more of a more into Bitcoin, but also I also really thought back then that the privacy coins and the fungibility aspect would take off in some of these other alts. I
or like
thought that
Monero or something like that.
yeah, yeah, and I thought not maybe not even necessarily for the privacy angle, but for the fungibility aspect. That's to me one of the weaknesses that Bitcoin has in its current implementation is, by default everything's, you know, traceable and everything.
Yeah, like mega traceable. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
people think of it like cash, and it's like it is the literal exact opposite of cash. Like
yeah, exactly. And that was the intention though, is the intention was it was supposed to be anonymous, but and that's why I thought like Monero and Zcash and like Zencash and a couple of those others. That's why I was really following a lot of those because I thought that those I thought that was a legitimate improvement that, but the market has spoken and no one cares essentially, you know.
I I'm yeah, now that you mention it, I'm really surprised too, because I do remember thinking like I was positive one of those would work out too, just for like at the very least for things like the Silk Road back then.
Yeah.
Um, not saying like it's a good or bad use for crypto, but like it's a market that it would serve well if you're using something like Monero. Yeah, that's very interesting. And
Yeah.
even oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, the only thing I guess you could really do now would be using mixers like Tornado Cash or something, and even that is not. It's a centralized mixer essentially. Like you're not. Yeah, that's very interesting that
Yeah,
there isn't like a cash cryptocurrency.
the problem with using those centralized mixers too is, they still record IP addresses and stuff and whatnot. I mean, it's different than having it done at protocol level, and that was one of the criticisms with Zcash. They had that paper that came out a few years ago where it was like they were trivially able to trace most of the addresses because so few of the funds were actually done using the ZK function. So like they were able to track like even I think the mining rewards for the team and everything. So it was, yeah, not having it by default at the protocol level is a big downside to me. I mean, and again, even if you're not doing anything illegal, as we saw like with Canada, um, being able to have your coins be fungible and not
Mhm.
be attributed to something political. I mean, it's same thing with Julian Assange, right? That was one of the first legitimate uses of crypto as a means of censorship resistant money, was when PayPal and all the banks shut down his ability to use the legacy banking system. So people were donating in Bitcoin back in the day. So
Yeah, yeah, and now you could just have, because it's you have the risk of being able to basically black box like some Ethereum or Bitcoin based on its history, which like in some ways it's like, oh, if this was used by like this horrible thing, it seems like a nice thing. But on the other hand, that means that you have censorable, like, yes, you could mix or something, but it doesn't matter if you can track all of that. And like some exchanges won't even let you withdraw or use money that's been through a mixer. Um, I don't know. It's definitely interesting.
yeah, I know one of the, there's a lot of hand wringing about money laundering and whatnot, but the mega banks routinely get busted for having money laundering as a core part of their business. And, they get
Yes.
find
Yeah.
like 1% of the profits that they make from it, and again in the billions and hundreds of, it's crazy. So obviously to me, that's obviously not the reason why governments are going after it.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's cool. Yeah. So you once you heard about Ethereum and you started tinkering with it, so you decided to play around with Solidity, and your one of your first creations is PixelMap. This is super early in the Ethereum space, and as we now know, there's only one earlier NFT project that we know of right now, and that is Etheria. I mean, the fact that you have such an important and early place in Ethereum's history, it's got to feel pretty amazing, and maybe slightly curious. How do you feel about learning that when you
I Yeah, it's really weird. Especially like if I go to a conference, like an NFT conference, and you look around, because the not every NFT is on Ethereum, obviously, but like the majority are, and seeing like just like this huge space, it feels very, very surreal to know that I was that early. And it's also weird because like no one has any idea. Like I'm just standing there and they have no idea that I was that early. So it's kind of a strange, I don't know, it's just a very odd feeling. A lot of the time I feel like it was just, I was super lucky at the right place at the right time. When I talk to people, though, they do tell me like there weren't that many people making things like that back then. So it wasn't completely luck. But it does feel like that sometimes. It's like I feel like I found a cheat code or something accidentally. The other part of that too was even just trying to learn it was really difficult because there's like nothing
Oh
out
yeah.
there. The only thing that I had really was Cyrus, the guy that created Etheria. He'd actually published a little set of tutorials on GitHub. I remember referring to those. I remember being too cheap to pay $20 for an Etheria tile. Um, and then there were, I remember seeing like lots of Ponzi tutorials, which I thought like back then I thought it was kind of lame. Um, and it was just and it was so much harder to write it in terms of like testing it, because there's no like I, there was an Etherscan. I'm trying to think, like I'm just thinking like now you have hard hat and you have like where you can spin up a local node easily and test things super quickly. And back then I remember just using like this horrible editor, and it was like I would literally try to deploy like I don't know, it was just not yes, we had testnet, that was really it. There was no like I don't know, it was just it wasn't easy to get like, so even though the code is fairly simple if you look at it, even just getting it to compile was just weird, just because it was like a new language where you couldn't really Google much about it. And there was another one at the same time called, I think it was Serpent. Does that sound right?
I'm not
Um,
familiar with that one.
I think it was called Serpent. It was some kind of, not Viper. I think it was Serpent. It was right before Solidity. I believe it was
Okay.
also by Vitalik. Um, and I could not read it whatsoever. So like at the very beginning, it was like, which one do I use? And it was like Solidity looked kind of like a normal language. So that's what I went with. But there was the other time, like the other part of that is when you're writing it, you're like, I know I can't change whatever I launch. And I know if there's a vulnerability, then that's people's money, even if it's not much money. So I just remember being like a little nervous when I was deploying it and just like really wanting to double check everything, but at the same time not knowing what to double check because it was like it was just very early.
Did you test that on testnet before you deployed, or did you deploy to prod, or dev and prod type thing?
Um, I I don't remember. All I know is there's not a. I believe I have one other contract on mainnet that literally does nothing. Thankfully, it's not like it's PixelMap. It's like it's literally like contract compiles. It's like it makes Terra Nullius, I think, look advanced. It does like nothing. Um, so I think I
Just
have.
basically testing your tool set at the time. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and then I don't I don't think I deployed I'm pretty sure PixelMap, like I deployed straight to mainnet only a single time. So I was really lucky on that. It was not I don't know, like if you look at the contract itself, it's only 70 lines. It's a really simple contract. I don't know, like I got really lucky on that because I know there's lots of other projects that weren't so lucky.
I guess before we go further, let's kind of explain what PixelMap is right now. So PixelMap IO is basically a large grid that's hosted on a website that pulls data from your smart contract, that it allows people to buy and sell and update tiles on a grid. Well, I guess before we go into your inspiration, I guess I'd like, to your point, yeah, you're so lucky that you were so careful about how you created your smart contract, because like if one thing weren't in place, then this thing would still not be tradable or valuable today. I mean, if you made a mistake with how the ownership was done, or if it had an infinite mint or something like that. I mean, and the fact you also still had the keys, right?
That's the luckier part. I actually have several wallets. I was thinking, yeah, I luckily had the one that matters the most. But there is one that like I have one wallet that holds this. So short version is I deployed PixelMap, and the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that it worked with like not just my wallet, but like someone else's wallet. Like not just the one that deployed the contract. And the very first tile that was such an image was the very center. I bought that one with a different wallet I was using specifically just to test at that exact point in time from a different wallet. That's why I made it. And I think I searched for like 16 by 16 pixel art, and the first thing was a spider on Google. I don't actually even like spiders. So the short version though is I do have the I want to say it's the Mist wallet still. I do not know the password, and I have spent a lot of time trying to get that back. So the center tile will probably I don't know, until there's a better like cracking tool, it will remain a spider and remain with that wallet. But yeah, I'm very lucky that I still had the other one.
There's services out there where if you have like a list of partial things that you're using for passwords, you can pay these guys that'll run like these hash crackers against that. And that
Oh,
probably,
I have made a dictionary of like every obviously not every password because I'm missing one. I don't know. I've definitely been trying to run different tools on it.
okay.
The problem is that account, like it was solely for just testing that one time, and I never used it again. And I don't think I ever cared about like it was. I didn't think I would need that one again. I don't know. It's not. I wish I knew, but I'm sure the password is something stupid that I only use one time.
It's probably like password or something.
That's yeah, with like an @ sign or something. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Oh, that's funny. Well, yeah. I mean, that's really fortuitous that that you still had, because I mean, a lot of people, Ethereum and everything was really cheap back then. A lot of people, they didn't take care to retain the old wallets and backups, or they lost their equipment, or what have you. And through the course of time, a lot of those early wallets and assets were lost. So you're really well, being an IT guy, I mean, it makes sense that you would take the extra steps to save that. So that's really awesome that it did. But let's I guess we can go in and let's talk about so you created, what was your vision when you were creating this, in terms of how, like again, you said you wanted a hello world, but how did you imagine this looking, or what was the intention for, like, with the website front end and everything?
So I was very obviously inspired by Alex Tu's $1 Million homepage. He'd actually made that website in 2004, and I remember seeing that, like, back when I was just super early, like just getting on the internet, and like it was one of the earliest web pages. I remember seeing it and reading about it, and it was just something I always thought was amazing. Like, the TLDR is basically he sold each pixel for $1, and there were 1 million pixels. And he did that when he was in college. He's now actually the founder of a site called calm.com. And like very ironically or strangely, I've actually talked back and forth with him about like giving him advice on, he's going to mint a 1 of 1, I believe, of the $1 Million homepage at some point. Because I was like, don't use the Opensea storefront contract. Like, I don't care what you do, just don't do that. That was like my big thing, and I just sent him some stuff. But I was super inspired by what he had done. And one of the first things that I thought about with Ethereum, I have no idea why it came to my mind, was but was that page, because I remember thinking it would be perfect to have, like, if you bought a pixel from him, then he would have to update the page, and he's the one running the web server for it. And if his web server ever went down, or if he wanted to change it, there's nothing that you could do. It has turned out that his like him hosting it, has been one of the most reliable things ever. It's still up, so
Oh,
he
that's
might end up,
amazing.
yeah, since 2004. So he's actually lasted longer than any blockchain. But for me, it was really the removing like any possibility of censorship, and being able to make it where when someone owns it, they truly own it. Like, the fact that someone could buy a tile and I can't change it even if I want to, I thought that was such a cool concept, and that's what I wanted to make. And then the other part was just like little implementation details. I forget what size he, like, his was $1 per pixel, but he sold them in, I want to say it was like 10 by 10 or something squares. And I went with 16 by 16 because I wanted there was a game called Mario Paint for Super Nintendo, and that was one of the earliest games that I had that I really enjoyed, because it was just like a really creative game. And that was the tile sizes that it used, and it was just kind of, it was like a mix between $1 Million homepage and Mario Paint, is what I was trying to kind of blend together with decentralization.
Interesting. And the $1 Million homepage, like in the early, I mean, I guess it's not super early internet, but still pretty early internet. That was one of the projects that hit all sorts of press, from like print magazines to, newspapers. It was a big deal. Yeah, I remember that back in the day too. That's really cool. I really love how, your choice of size has really led to like a really unique aesthetic too on PixelMap, because it really has fostered NFTs, especially old NFTs, kind of, for whatever reason, they kind of went with maybe because all of us grew up playing like NES and early video games, but they've kind of taken on a pixelated aesthetic, and PixelMap really works well with that. It looks really great.
The that part I've been really happy about, because so a couple parts on that. One is, when I made it, I didn't think that people would use it for what it's used, like, I didn't picture it being what it is now. I absolutely love what it's become. I thought people would pay to advertise on it briefly, and then they would sell the advertising to someone else. and that it would be as like when I looked at the $1 million homepage, that's really what that was. PixelMap, thankfully, and I think a big part of this is because of literally like how much money the tiles are now. It is generally not anything like that. It's usually something that is meaningful to the owner. Not always, but like that is either it's an NFT that they have. In one case, it's someone's actual like baby. Like this guy put a literal picture of his infant pixelized on it. There's like a Pepe on it. It's just it looks much more artistic than I ever imagined it would. So that part I've been really happy about. The other part too, with like the early NFTs tending to be pixelated. One of the things that I really wanted as well was it was kind of mandatory for the project in my mind, was with the $1 million homepage. I looked at that as having a central point of failure where if the server goes down, the images are gone. And for me, I wanted to make sure that the image data was stored on chain so that as long as there's a single Ethereum node somewhere on the planet, those images still exist. And because of that, generally everything's pixelated because it's much cheaper in gas to do. So yeah, it ended up working out really well.
That's awesome. Yeah, the fact that that the images on the tiles are immutable is really rad. I think, and again, that's another thing that you were really early on. On Ethereum, again, you're also the second to do on-chain images. I mean, I think you can kind of consider the way Ethereum does that. I mean, it's
I would, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it sucks because literally everything that I would want to claim first for, I think
yeah,
if Ethereum is able to hit it, yeah, they went 3D, I went 2D, but yeah, I
yeah,
would consider there's the first images on chain.
yeah. So really cool though. I mean, I love, and like you, I think it's really awesome and fun how, when you look at the map of and you see the wide variety of all of the images that people have chosen, and like you said, there's very little advertising on there now. It's like you said, it's mainly personal at this point. So
The only advertising that I really noticed was there was the point when the golem.io stuff was added, and almost immediately everyone was like, oh my god, this is hideous. And I distinctly remember they asked for help from an artist within the Discord. I think it was Rico Dutch that volunteered, because basically everyone was like, please spend the gas to make this pretty. You just made the entire thing look ugly. So they spent the time and gas to re-update their tiles so that they wouldn't look like aesthetically hideous. I just thought that was really funny and cool. The other part that's neat about that too is because they're all stored on chain. If like say you have a tile, you do. You put something on it and then you end up selling your tile and someone else puts something new on it. Your original image is still on there on chain. So like I can very easily display every version of every tile. It's just really cool seeing it evolve over time, but being able to see any time in its history as well.
yeah, that's really cool. And again, that's one of the exciting things about crypto that you're able to maintain in your NFT project is, immutability and keeping all the records on the blockchain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really cool.
yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the rediscovery. That it was such a, we don't have to go way into the weeds on it, but I'll share my experience with it because I thought it was kind of funny. Um, you know, as a collector, I saw some tweets or some other friends that were into NFTs mentioning that Adam had a new discovery back in the day, and uh, I was so I jumped on whenever it was discovered, and I started to claim some tiles as you were in the process of repricing them. And the other part that I thought was kind of funny though is it turned into a throughout that process as you were manually and then you started to script change the price on the tiles for people to be able to buy and kind of get trading going. So we had that bot come on And for the collectors, it was so miserable trying to get tiles then, because you literally had to outgas or just rely on luck, trying to get these tiles, because the bot guys, I think they got, what was it, nearly half the supply, or
Nearly a fourth of the supply.
okay, yeah. So I
Or
mean, it
no,
was
sorry, not nearly, basically exactly a fourth of the supply.
okay. That's one of my in terms of like my regrets of the rediscovery. I know that this is permissionless, and this is blockchain, and everyone is free to do whatever they want. However, I think it was a shame that they took so many. I think if they had even done 5%, it would have been way better, because it really hurt a lot of people that were, they could only afford one or two tiles or whatever, but they couldn't even do that because this bot was just scooping up absolutely everything towards the end. So, I mean, so I was able to claim, I claimed some for a friend who lent me some and I got, I think 3 tiles for him. And then for myself, I was able to claim, 8 tiles, but that was like all one day and half of another day, just like being glued to Etherscan and just like grinding, man. That was that was quite the process.
That was there, yeah, there. If I had a time machine, well, I mean, there's lots of other like very much more important things I would do with a time machine, but that would definitely be one of the things would be um yeah, redoing how that was done, just because what the biggest part I would say honestly was um I just didn't know really any, like I can't even describe how little I knew about NFTs or even what was going on at that point. I didn't even really understand gas, because gas was so cheap back in 2016. I knew it was a thing, but I didn't really care about it. I just knew like I lost a few pennies when I would do something. I remember before I had the scripts doing it for me, I had basically trained my partner to help me try to do it manually quicker. And when like a transaction would go through, I told her like just increase the gas, like whatever it was, just add 20 to it. And at one point she's like, because she kept saying like, do you want me to keep increasing? I'm like, yeah, just keep going. And then finally she's like, I think this is going to be more gas than we're selling it for. I'm like, okay, no, stop. Like, don't do it. Like, and the fees.wtf site.
Yeah, yeah.
The last time I looked at that, I was at 300K. That was very unfortunate. So both of us were getting slaughtered in that gas war. But the other part too with the bot, I so several things. One was I didn't understand why people were buying them, because I didn't understand NFTs. Two, I didn't know who it was, and if it was like, is this like something that'll last for a day, or is this like it felt like I was being punked or something. Um, and then like when I found out that a bot was getting them towards the end, because we ended up pausing and doing like the lottery and other things once we realized that the bot was an issue. I didn't realize why a bot was an issue at first. Like I was thinking like, if someone's buying them, like I don't care. Like why would I care if one person buys every single one? Like
The sale's a
that's
sale, right?
the sale is a sale. And then it honestly wasn't until probably quite a bit later, as I started to really understand NFTs, and probably not even really until I started collecting them myself, that I started really understanding like wanting to have like more people, unique people having them. That way your community is like vibrant and lively. The like there's so much more to it than it, you know what I mean? Like I didn't really get the number of holders. Like I did not realize that was a thing. And I also had no idea how to prevent a bot at the time. I would like, I don't think there's a way that I could taking me at that point. I don't think there's a way I could have done it better, because I had no idea what I was doing. I wish I could send current me back. Um, I think it would have gone a lot better, or I would have done like I mean, I could have done like a whitelist or something, which would have been not that you can't make multiple wallets, but it would at least make it. I don't know. I agree with you though. It was very it was a crazy week.
Yeah, I mean, and like you were saying back then, that I think that part of the year, I mean, earlier in the year for sure, gas on Ethereum was just really high for a long time. So, it made it, like you said, it made it really expensive both for us trying to get them and for you trying to having to do all those transactions, multiple transactions to reprice those tiles too. I mean, um, like right now, I don't see the Golem tiles on the like images on PixelMap. Last time I looked, do you know if they're still big holders or if they've
Oh,
been offloading?
I'm so confused. I didn't realize that. I'm looking, that is so odd.
And I bring that up for the audience. The Golem, the tiles that are updated by Golem are the guys who ran the bots that got a quarter of the supply.
That is so odd. I actually, that makes me want to check this. Oh, 1 second. I'm trying to remember one of the tiles that would have had that. That's so interesting because I don't, so I do know some updates from them, but that would not be, I'm almost wondering if I have a bug on my front end that's not rendering them. That
Oh,
seems
okay.
so, no, never mind. No, I just looked, I'll dig into that more after this because that is extremely interesting because it would be expensive to remove them. The other part is I know that they are running the Golem marketplace,
Yeah,
which is like they would want to advertise it.
exactly. That's why I was confused too, because that's an ongoing thing. So I'd be surprised that, um, yeah, surprised
That's
that they.
so odd. Yeah, I will dig into that. So a couple things that I know on that end is one is they are that marketplace, they are going to add a historical section. I talked to them about it, which I'm pretty excited about. The other thing is I had asked them, I want to say it was like a week or a few weeks ago. I'm really bad at time now, but I had asked them, hey, is there any chance like if I hooked you up with the amount of money that would cost in gas, would you be willing to wrap your tiles? That way, like it is so much easier for me to deal with wrap tiles. Like because they're ERC 721s. And considering they had so much of the supply, and they did it for free, like just to be nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, they also did it on a day that where like gas was like five, something like it was it was ridiculously cheap for how many, because I think I paid like $80 for each of mine when I wrapped mine. Um, but the no, they have been like one of the biggest holders in terms of like they do sell, but very frequently, and it's only when like every now and then PixelMap will has gone above like the 3 ETH point, and that's really the only time I see them selling. They generally haven't really sold if it's under that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So I mean, and again, that's one of the, with greater distribution, we might see, higher prices because they wouldn't be essentially dumping at that point, which I think that's about, I mean, for the most part, except for small spikes, that's about as high as PixelMap has gone for the time being. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that around that the other thing that I did see as well was and someone in the PixelMap channel had let me know when they wrapped all theirs, they wrote a script obviously to do it, and they had done because there's two steps. Like one is you list it for sale, and then you have to buy it with the wrapper essentially from yourself. Uh, oh my god, I wonder if that's why. So the short version of my theory about this is that because the ones with the no, never mind, that doesn't make any sense. Um, it the short version is the Dontda tiles, which are ones that I know that they had set those so that they could wrap them at I think it's 1 ETH was the price, and it looks like their script failed on wrapping just those, and they didn't get around to finishing it, and someone else saw them on the contract and bought them, so those are now owned by I believe the creator of Crypto Cities.
oh no
um,
way.
So
They
yeah,
got ganked.
yeah, it was just very ironic that
Yeah.
they would. It was like, you know what I mean, because they were the
I
bot.
think that's very, very fitting, to be honest, you know?
Very karmic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really nice block of tiles too. So, congrats to them for scooping that. So
Well, that was one of the very first ones I saw during the rediscovery, or like that was very noticeable. That one and the I love JPEGs were like ridiculously noticeable.
yeah, that's one of my favorites is the I love JPEGs.
Yes.
I have to admit too, so through the course of the rediscovery and trading and whatnot, I at one point I owned a 2x2, which I had my punk on. And now I have a 3x3, which is one of the grails in my collection. I was tweeting about PixelMap when I don't know, like no one was talking about it. And I was so surprised that it was so slept, and I still think it's underappreciated, but I'm really happy to have that as part of my collection.
I'm pretty sure yours was the only 3x3 for a while, wasn't it?
I think I was probably the first. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that that was the biggest one on the map. Like the only thing that ended up passing that was the giant Pepe, I think, on the side, and that wasn't for a long time later.
Yeah, I think that's a 4x4, and yeah, that's much larger. One thing that's interesting, and one of the reasons I tried to go for a 3x3, is that it's actually perfect scaling for little punk PNG. You know,
Oh,
like
like
if
it's the exact
yeah,
resolution.
if you scale it to a 4x4, it looks awful. And same thing. It's kind of a little bit janky at a 2x2. So a 3x3 is, and also that I couldn't afford to go any bigger either. So it worked out. I was really happy with it. It looks great on the map.
Yeah, it's very noticeable.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm sure you've met a lot of collectors throughout your tenure running Pixel Map too. What's that been like, being like running one of the bigger communities in the vintage NFT space too?
Um, it actually feels like one of the smaller communities when I look at like I don't know, actually it is a decent size. I guess overall. The part that's been really neat is like there's just so many interesting people. Like one of the obvious ones that's super involved in the space would be Daryl Morey. I never thought I'd be talking to the president of the 76ers about like random crypto things. So that was very cool. There's so many weird things, or not weird, but like random things that have been placed on the map where I've ended up getting to know someone through it. Like there's one that's a chocolate tile. I've ordered chocolate now 2 times and probably getting ready to do that a third time. There's one that I found that was selling like these weird coffee cups that when heated, they end up looking like a beer stein, which is very odd.
That's
Um,
kind of funny.
yeah, it was really funny. Just like really eh, the people are just very interesting. There's a little kiwi bird that's on towards like the top left.
Mhm.
One of my it's a guy that's been really he comes more from the art collection world. And he's a Kiwi natively and is now in Australia, um but like these are all just different like the amount of countries with people that I would have never even bumped into but now know the people fairly well. Like it's just been really neat and strange. Like it's I I I don't think I can't think of anything else that would be I guess like if you had like a hobby that spanned countries, you would have the same thing, but it's just it is neat meeting a really wide variety of people.
Yeah, I love the diversity too. That's something I think something that's unique or 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 special about crypto space is, like right now, a lot of people talk about diversity and inclusion, and the Web3 space is actually like a couple light years ahead of that, where no one knows and or cares about, unless you're just chatting off on the side. No one cares if you're white or black or female or your religion or any of that stuff. There's people I've talked to for years and I don't know any of that stuff. And to be honest, it doesn't really matter unless we ever meet up in person. I mean, it's it's a really cool space in that regard too. But
That part's really neat. And it's also neat seeing like what people care about, or like what I think the terms like the emergent behavior kind of thing. Like you see and like some people put the flag of their country on the map, or like one person put this little scuba thing on because like his top hobby is he's always scuba diving on this island he lives on. Or yeah,
well,
I don't know, it's just really interesting.
yeah. One thing I wanted we kind of talked briefly about the rediscovery where and during this rediscovery period, Kim learned that people were now willing to pay a lot of money for early NFTs, especially like, people who specialize in that, like myself. It's become its own thing. So through that, you were able to sell the remainder of the tiles that you owned, which you still had the majority of them were unsold from back in the day. One of the things that I wanted to highlight though is that there's so many projects out there that really didn't do anything after that, and or you had the opportunity, Ken, to really just call that a win and walk away and have that be a day. But one thing I've been really amazed at is like all of the continued developments and updates and the cool stuff that you guys are working on for PixelMap. It's really awesome to see what you guys are doing. Again, hats off for you, because it would have been really easy to just take the money, leave the website and call it a day. But we have all these improvements already, like we've had a couple of iterations of new versions of compression, so it's cheaper to update your tile now. I know when I was updating my 2x2 tile, it was enormously expensive, and it was still pretty expensive for my 3x3. I mean, oh, it's very expensive, but that's gotten a lot better with those improvements. You're like, let's talk about some of the stuff you're working on that I think is really rad too. Like, what do you have planned for the future with PixelMap?
So first off, thank you. And a big part of that was like when you have that kind of money come in for something that you've built, I guess for me, like I feel a really strong obligation to the people that own it. Like I know the whole thing with historical NFTs is that it's the age, the story behind it is really, I think, the big value driver. But it's also like I don't think I would feel right just kind of abandoning it. And then the other part of that too is it's actually legitimately really fun to work on. But the compression was a huge win. So like I think you were early enough that you have some of the tiles that have no compression, which is very painful. Because yeah, my original thing, like it was just hex triplets, and there's literally nothing there to say. I remember updating a tile and it being like $800 or something horrible. The next version of that with decent compression, I did a compression contest and gave away a tile for the winner for that. That made it much better. And then the most recent version of that was actually the creator of PixelCons reached out, and he literally made a PR and asked like, would I be willing to merge it? I was like, I looked at it and realized it was even more efficient, and he'd done all the work, and I was like, I love you. Like it was so nice because it's another historical NFT project, like creator just doing it to help. Like that was really neat. In terms of what I'm working on mainly now, it's really twofold. One is I'm building a game on top of PixelMap, so it's not going to, like, it's in no way changing PixelMap itself, because that's the thing that matters, but it's more of like an add-on just for kind of like for fun for the community. Basically where each person that has a tile would have they'll have a house in game, aside like that they can decorate or store things in. Aside from that, like when you look at Web3 gaming overall, the vast majority are extremely boring. I'm not saying all of them are, but like if Web3 game, like a game for Web3 is the goal, especially making money off of it, it usually is not a tremendously fun experience. What I am trying to build is something where if you take out Web3, it's still a really fun game. And the only thing that changes if you're a tile owner is that you have a house that you can decorate and kind of show off. But that has been really, really fun to work on. Hired an additional dev because it is so much more work than I realized. Game programming is like a whole new level of difficulty. And then I have a musician and artist as well as a feels like a project manager, but is more of like a producer almost. That's kind of keeping me on track with everything. So that is one really big focus. Like today, I'm working on trying to make it so that items sync perfectly across like any like multiple clients. So like if you pick up something and set it down, everyone else can see that at the exact same time. Which sounds really easy, but it's actually really tricky. And then the other thing that I'm working on kind of full time is the NFT archaeology site to just kind of basically provide a resource for historical NFTs. It's there's quite a few sites already out there, or they're being made right now that are doing the same thing. And it's just kind of, I'm trying to really tailor mine towards being a like really in depth on technical details, because that's the part that I really know really well. And then just making it where the content's really easily accessible. Like I have a API that is set up. I feel that I've set up very professionally so that if someone makes like a nicer version of the site, like their own flavor, it would be very easy for them to pull all the data in that I've already gotten. But yeah, those two things are definitely what I've been working on.
Yeah, well, let's chat about the pixel map part first, and then I do want to talk about the NFT archaeology. I think that is really important too. When you had the idea for the like before there was really the gamification, just the idea to have a house that you can deploy your like have a gallery essentially and deploy it, like show your like a pixelated version of your NFTs or whatever. I thought it was such a really fun innocent project, but it still has the opportunities to be adapted and taken further in the future too. I mean, you could even go like the full Aether city type or VR type, like also have those views tacked on in the future too. I mean, there's so much promise there. It's super rad. And that's one of the things I was banging the drum on Twitter last year. I was like, guys, like there's all this cool stuff. Like, why is no one talking about PixelMap? So I think that's super cool. And I also agree to your point is especially for a lot of us. I mean, we're old enough where like I'm not going to play a game for like tokens for money. I mean, like I'm not, again, if I made $10 playing that, it's not worth my time, but also
Yeah.
it's that's not what I want to do with my like play a grind game for. It's not what I'm about. Yeah, exactly. So I really like what you guys are doing in terms of just making it like focusing on fun and and I love the aesthetic too that you're going with, which is still kind of like that Link to the Past type art style too. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I see a lot of promise in not just what your current implementation of the houses are, but because I know one thing you're trying to work on too is potentially allowing tile owners who have multiple tiles contiguous can have like a bigger house too, right?
Yes. Yep. And that part I think will make it well, so that's one of the things I really want to do, because it makes it where, well, like obviously for you it would be very cool because or another thing that I'm looking at too is and some of this will be a little bit of coordination with the community to make sure that all of this kind of fits in with what they're thinking. But like if you look at the giant Pepe, for example, on the map, when I see that, like the person that owns that, I would think that like them having a house would be really cool. But if they're open to it, I think it would be very cool to make that like that might be a literal like Pepe swamp, like where you see little Pepes like jumping around in that area. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that would be rad.
yeah, like I don't want to make it where like I want to be very fair where like one tile isn't cooler than another tile because the game is really more of a separate thing added onto it. But I also want to be able to pull things in that are inspired from the map into the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. It's there's two different levels that are really, or layers that are kind of interacting with each other. If you and you can coordinate that art style and the map to. Anyway, I thought that was a really cool idea. So I'm looking forward to I and even like the music is really cool too. I jumped on last night to play around a little bit, and it's already looking really sharp too. So I'm looking forward to seeing where you guys take it too.
Thank you very much. The palette is actually getting ready to look I want probably over the next couple of days it'll end up looking quite a bit better. Like artistically it'll just the palette is being tweaked a little bit to make it more kind of like a brighter feel, like a little closer to the Link to the Past color scheme, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
then there's I have one artist who's done the vast majority, and his stuff is absolutely beautiful. And then I have another artist that's also doing uh, basically she, she she is fitting in with the exact same style, but is helping like add more to the tile set faster. Because at this point, like the only thing limiting us on the world is basically having enough tiles for the area. So just trying to get the art for that quicker, because like we can do anything we want as long as we have art for it. But yeah, I'm really happy with the music so far as well as the art.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, I think it's such a fun, like addition that it doesn't compromise the original integrity of the project either. It's just an extra, there's extra value, extra fun to, and extra benefits for owning the tiles. It's a fine line that some projects walk where they try and, some projects they try and do like a V2 or a new issuance, and it kind of in some cases, it's interesting that some of them won't even really understand like why collectors are into it to begin with too.
Oh
So they kind of,
yes,
you know
yes.
it's interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, so that's really fun. How long do you think the development of the game will take? Because I have no idea.
I that makes two of us. It's really really hard because like I have we have different things that we want for like an MVP, but there's no like this type of game. I don't know how you would ever. I mean, obviously there would be an end at some point, but I don't know how you get there because it's like every single time we add something to it, it immediately makes it where it's like you have these other ideas that come in that would be really cool to add, or you see like I'll hop on and I'll see people doing really funny stuff that I had no idea was even a possibility. Like we had a piano that you could buy to play different music, and immediately the first problem that we had was people were throwing their pianos into the ponds, and that was not like I was not predicting that to be an issue. And everyone's like, "Hey, how do I get my piano out?" It's like you threw your what? Why? So, like, but yeah, to answer your question, I really don't know how I like. I think I'll have we'll be able to have like this is the official release, like where we're at the point where there's enough content where I really feel like it's a legitimate where it's like like a game that you could see maybe on Steam or like on a Switch or something, whereas that level of detail and content to go through. But I definitely don't have like a clear end goal at the moment of what that would look like. It's really the other part of that is it's just really fun to add more to it. um so yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, I think it's interesting too because we haven't used this term, but what you're calling a game and the integration with NFTs and everything, and also kind of the direction you're taking it, you could also call it a metaverse too. I mean, you have game activities, but you know, you've got wide open spaces there for, like I said, you can have like your own, you could go into a house and then you can have like an ability to transfer into like an on cyber type gallery or a VR type gallery, or you can still view it in the OG pixelated part of the game too. I mean, there's so many cool things that you can do with that.
Well, one of the easier things that we can do with it is like, because I'm running the NFT archaeology site, that naturally means I have to get all of that data anyway. I've
Yeah.
been getting it into a really easy format, like for in terms of an API. And I do want to have, like, we already it's not on the map, but we already have like we have the levels like designed. There's just no way for you to physically get there yet. But for a museum that basically I want to tie that into the historical NFT data from NFT archaeology. That way you could basically wander around into a museum and read about like the different NFTs, if that makes sense. So it's like I'm kind
Yeah.
of double dipping on the data that I've already gotten and using it to provide content in game. And then the other part of that is obviously I want to spend a huge part of this is making it like being able to customize what you have and having like a kind of like you mentioned, being able to decorate your house with like your NFTs where you can click it and see it pop up, that kind of thing, which is really common with Web3 games, but it's something I really want to focus on. And then the other part is I think that we'll be really able to tie into, like, if you're building a Web3 game and you're just trying to integrate NFTs, that is one thing where you can't really, you have to do everything so generic. Like, it's very easy for me to make it where you could decorate your house with any NFT that you want. But to add something that's very dynamic based on the exact type of NFT, um, I'm rambling, but what I'm trying to say is I'm really wanting to focus on the other historical NFTs. So like if you have
Oh,
um like I'll use mooncats because I love them. Using that as an example, we've been talking about like what it would look like if we had our artists do a tile set for an actual moon. So like there might be an area for mooncats where you could like that's how you get into it, and it's like mooncat themed, or like the Pepe themed swamp, or the part that makes that doable is because there's a limited supply of historical NFTs, there's only so many, like it's much easier to target all of them. You know what I mean?
yeah, I totally get what you mean. Having like you can just have these special features just for like the curated historic stuff that's on NFT archaeology. You know, like as an example too, you could like another way you could access that too is like you have like a portal where you go to if you see a mooncat on the map or in someone's collection, you can have the ability to teleport to like a mooncat, like you said, like a moon with, I don't know, that's really rad too. I hadn't even thought of that. But that makes total sense. I mean, I love mooncats too, of course. Who doesn't, right?
The other part of that too, and I my game dev, the one that's doing the more of the fun stuff, one of the things that he's really been focusing on is like if you look at like think about a, because it really looks and feels kind of like a Super Nintendo game. If you think about a map from like Zelda or Chrono Trigger or one of those old school games, and then you think about how many tiles there are, where there's 3,970, that is actually a tremendously large map. Like is a it's a big map. And one of the things that we're wanting to do to make it really interesting is so a couple things. One is like if you, in terms of where the tile house is, and this is ignoring being able to like combine tiles into a bigger house, that's a whole separate thing. But if you look at like say we have I think the last time I checked the database, there have been like 500 unique players, and um, I don't know the number of those that are tile holders, but let's say there's 200 tile holders have played so far. We're wanting to add like basically you would have these locations where they are eligible for your tile house to be, and then if you're playing and you have a tile, then you can, whoever, like first come first serve, you claim that house. That makes it where we don't have to build out the 3,970 at once. We just have to keep the world growing faster than more tile holders are coming in,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And then the other part of that too is making, because it's not a violent game, it's more of like a almost like an Animal Crossing, but more multiplayer. The other part of that too is I still want there to be a challenge, and one of the challenges is the verb that we're going for would be basically exploring and just like finding Easter eggs and like secret weird things. But the other part of that too, though, is like say one area is a desert, one is like this really wintry biome kind of thing, and making it where it's really hard to travel unless you have a certain item, and that item might be something that you have to work with someone else to get. And none of this is like a pay feature. This is completely game driven, where it's like, oh, I really need snow boots, but I live in this area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of making where there's lots of items you can get that improve your ability to travel, and the best items that you could have would be things that would allow you to teleport around the map. And kind of like you were saying with Mooncats, like maybe that's something where, yeah, going to the moon, like does that help you travel somewhere else on the map easily? And I think there's lots of stuff we can do there.
Yeah, I totally, I didn't even think about that till you brought it up, but I totally need to see the need for some diversity among the map because it's so large too. If there were no diversity, it would be really almost like a grind to go, travel the map. But yeah, if you create different zones or biomes or like, or even like you said, even like seasons, or I don't know. I mean, mountains and yeah, exactly. Just, make it a lot more fun to explore.
Yeah, and there's the other part of that too is there was something, and I got feedback from the community to make sure that it was something everyone agreed on. But like one of the possibilities would be to have the world be exactly like the grid of PixelMap, and thankfully everyone, including myself, was against that because it would be the most boring map ever.
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking about like everyone's
Mhm.
house is on a perfect grid, that's not exactly an interesting world.
Yeah.
And I think by doing it where it's literally first come first serve on where you're claiming your house, that means like say we added all almost 4,000 right off the bat, then you're going to have lots of empty areas that don't have a lot of people. If you do it where it's first come first serve, you're going to have a lot more people in the same areas, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, because I really
Yeah,
want people to bump into each other on the game.
kind of like how in the metaverses, basically generally the most valuable properties are the in the first section where people claim, and it becomes kind of like the central hub, and the cheaper areas are usually more out in the peripheral. So there, I mean, that's another way that kind of adds a value in its own way to the early adopters too.
Yep, yeah, I completely forgot about, yeah, if you think of like Decentraland, is exactly
Yeah.
like and it is like a, it doesn't impact like the price of your tile or anything, obviously, because it's a add-on. But I do want it to be one of those things where it's, yeah, the people that are playing it now are treated, you know what I mean, like the early, I always like rewarding the early adopters or the people that are the most active.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even in the future, I could see again ways to have a tie-in with other metaverses too. I mean, there's the possibilities are endless there. But yeah, well, that's really exciting. I'm like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing it progress. Well, let's jump and talk a little bit about you mentioned NFT archaeology, which I just I'd seen you mention a few times, but I hadn't clicked onto it, and I looked at it last night, and I'm really impressed with what you're doing there. It's providing a valuable service to the vintage NFT community. You want to kind of describe the website and kind of where you're trying to go with that?
Yep, yeah, so it's basically I, for all of us that are like I have become a very well, talking to you, I'm not a big collector, but for myself, I have a collection that I find decent, of historical NFTs. And one of the things that I found really frustrating was just being able to when we talk about people aping in, I've aped into projects without knowing what's there, and then later finding things like unlimited supply or some other kind of thing that for me would be a deal breaker. And then other times I have issues where it's like I really want to find the Discord for one of these projects or who created it, or like where the assets are stored, that type of thing. And I really wanted to make something that would be very easy for people to use to get all of that information, as well as being able to very easily see if there's an issue like with a contract, a wrapper, or really just be a resource for the community. One thing I will add is I need to see how many I have listed on there right now. It is not comprehensive. I still have quite a few to add. It actually takes forever because it takes me about 2 hours, 1 hour minimum, and that's if it's a super easy contract. Generally, it takes me about 2 hours to add one to the site just because I'm trying to go through the entire contract. And then if there's a wrapper or multiple wrappers, going through that, as well as getting like any information I can find on that, whatever the NFT is. The other part of that, so right now I specifically only have Ethereum NFTs on there. And the reason for that is it's almost entirely a time issue, as well as I don't have the knowledge yet on like for me, I am obviously very, very familiar with Ethereum, so it's very easy for me to audit a contract and know exactly what's going on. I am still a noob on like some of the NFTs on other chains, and I do have like the way I have it set up, all of the data is coming from this GitHub repo that's public. So anyone can add more, like they can put in a request to add a different NFT in there. And then I go in and kind of verify everything that they said is accurate. But yeah, it's really just, I'm trying to make it where it's just like the most informative site that you could use on a historical NFT. It's just getting the data together is a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's really, it's really invaluable for, I haven't taken to, I'm in IT too, and I haven't taken the time to learn Solidity yet. And like you said, there's been, one of my passions, I'm passionate about historical NFTs, the long-term value and the significance and how that ties into, one of the reasons I'm passionate about that is why crypto is so important, to humanity going forward, right? We're at a really interesting crux right now where central banks and world banks are are in the process of trying to foist central bank digital currencies on us. And I don't think that the way that they want to do that would be beneficial for anyone but themselves. So I guess kind of getting slightly off topic, but it's a valuable service for people like myself who haven't learned how to read Solidity or have the time to dig in. We were talking the other day because I had questions about a couple projects, and there's legit issues that you were able to find in the contract. And for some of these contracts, they can be remediated, and some of them they can't. And another example of the issues. So, well, I guess one thing I would say is if you can't, like with NFTs, I don't really consider them an NFT if they can be taken away or turned off or whatever at any time. That when you have that level of centralization or trust required, I think it's something else more akin to what we would call the digital collectibles that are like Steam or something like that. But
Every time I see pausable, I'm like, no,
yeah.
why do you have that?
Oh, and I know why I was getting off topic. I guess one of the things is I'm really passionate about trying to keep this space with some integrity and keep it clean. We've had some scandals in the past, and I don't want to really dig into it, but like, for example, we've had people that are trying to claim that contracts that are clearly not NFTs are NFTs. For whatever reason they're doing that, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's not right. And I think it's, I would hate to see people, one, get hurt and financially burned, but also to get turned off the space because of these type of actions. So and again, that's why I think that like this site is really great, because you don't even have to take your word for your assessments. You're showing what the issue is, and you can verify in the code yourself. But having a developer like yourself who takes the time to interpret this and lay it out, it really helps collectors, and I think it's going to be invaluable going forward. So thanks for doing that.
One of the interesting things that I started doing with that too is I have I know you come from the same computer background. I have a very the schema is like fully defined for all that data. So the red flags that I might find on a contract, those are all specified using an enum of what what the bad thing could be. And why I bring that up is if I find a contract that has something that is uniquely that has a unique flaw, then I'll add it to that enum. And if some other contract has that same flaw, I use the exact same value, and I can only use the same value. The reason why that's important to me is I don't want to have my own bias based on I am a creator and I know lots of other creators, and I don't want my bias from either liking or disliking a creator shaping the way that I phrase something. So one example would be if you take two NFT projects, they both have unlimited supply. PixelCons, for example, is one of my I love PixelCons. I think it's it's a neat concept. It has unlimited supply, but they are very, very obvious about it. That's actually the whole point of PixelCons, is anyone can make their own. And the way that they have theirs listed on OpenSea, you can filter by age. So I do think there's room for value there, but I'm not going to write I use the exact same wording for when I say that has an unlimited supply versus NFT, where I felt like someone was hiding the fact and trying to get away with it, because I don't want it to be I want to do it purely based on what I see on the contract, and I think that's the only way to do it fairly.
I agree. I mean, and even in the historic space, we see certain creators, they even want to bend history and tell things in a certain way just to, I don't know, they have their bias because of what they created. And I really appreciate you trying to keep it objective. And, I try and do the same thing too. There's a lot of stuff out there that is super cool that I don't own, that I'll still say it's super cool and I like and would like to get one day, even though I don't own it. I don't have to talk my bag in order to, like a project. One example I wanted to bring up too is Ether Lambos. So, this is another example of why this is so important. So there's two things actually I'd like to talk about Ether Lambos. One is after those were rediscovered, the team apparently has the ability to create unique attributes, and basically I'm assuming it's tack on metadata to the existing cars, which I really don't like, because essentially we've seen the team sell quote unquote more limited attributes on these old NFTs, really just creating rarity that wasn't intended to be there initially. And I don't know, I'm really uncomfortable with that approach. And the other thing that I didn't know that you pointed out, and which happened recently, and I know a holder who dumped because they did this, is they released a new collection. For a historic project to again, Ether Lambos, their initial deal is that they had a limited supply of, I think it was 1,600 or 1,800 or something. But when you release a new collection, that claim goes away. And what is it now, right? I mean,
in that case, they added 100 more, but the bigger issue, I think, to both of us there was the realization that you can add infinite, and that doesn't even require a bad developer or a bad actor. All it requires is the one that controls that key getting hacked. You could wake up one day and there are now 50,000 Ether Lambos, and there's absolutely nothing to prevent that. So it's just
I mean, and to your point, I mean, we've seen a lot of Discord hacks. One of the things, like, even if you have two-factor authentication, and like people like you and me, we're using hardware wallets for the majority of our stuff, but some of these contracts you're keeping like a private key, like in text file or something, because you need to, copy and paste or whatever. However you, whatever it is that, like, even if you have 2FA on like Discord, for example, there's people that, like, all it takes is clicking on a link, and in some cases not even that. There's 0-day exploits where, there's, through no fault of the developer, their accounts can be hijacked and it's game over. Or like you said, even if they have the best of intentions, with that centralization, that ability there, once that, like, if someone exploits it, that's it. You can't take it back.
Well, and the other interesting part on that is a lot of those, like those are one of the main things I look for on the FT archaeology site. And one of the things that I add in there is if they burn, like if they have the ability to burn that functionality, then I will remove the warning from the project. Like if you don't want a big red flag on it, all you have to do is burn it if you can. And I've had the interesting thing is I've had several projects where I've brought it up and they've said, yes, we already burned it. And then when I look at the contract, I'm like, no, you didn't. And then when you bring it up again, it's very interesting because and I'm not singling any projects out. Some have burned, some don't have the ability to burn, so all they can do is pretend to. And then others have said we want the flexibility to be able to make more later on if we want. And that part for me is so strange because it's like it's not strange that the creator would want to make more. That makes sense, but it is strange that people would want to collect it knowing that they have no idea how many there are. Like
It devalues the, I mean, as a collector, it it ruins it ruins my interest in that. If you have the ability to essentially dilute supply with like, again, it's not even that I don't know that they're newer and I couldn't choose to buy the older ones, but by the creator inflating the supply amongst casual users, it's gonna devalue the OGs, right? Because not everyone is sophisticated, and even if it's the same name in the mint, like the mint dates later, again, most people aren't sophisticated enough yet to see that. So it definitely dilutes that to me.
one of the things that I just found out about Opensea that I cannot tell you how much I dislike it is you know how normally on a contract you would provide a token URI that it's querying and that's where it's able to like get the metadata, or at least like that's going to return something that returns the metadata.
Yeah.
OpenSea actually allows you now to so say like I have a contract, I can add that as an FT to OpenSea. I can contact them and have them add a totally separate thing that has no connection in any way, shape, or form to be used as the metadata for that thing.
No
Meaning,
way.
like, yeah, so
I didn't
like,
know that.
yeah, because like I had always thought like at the very least I can query the contract and see like, oh, it's pointing at IPFS. So then I know that like that's how decentralized, like IPFS to me is like torrenting. It's not fully like I have mixed feelings about IPFS, but like I can't even trust the metadata to view that on I'm talking about OpenSea specifically.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a like the whole point of a digital asset is that you can see what you have, and I don't think that should ever be disconnected from what you're viewing.
Yeah, I agree about IPFS. The thing is, I'm not fudding it. I mean, what I view it as is it's a step in, like all of these NFTs, like some people become maximalists about a certain aspect, but IPFS had its place in like the progression of where we're going. But like in your case, to me, the gold standard is being completely on chain, right?
I,
Where
so like IPFS, yeah, I mean I'm biased, yeah, like to me I think on chain is where it's at, but IPFS I'm completely okay with. I'm talking about like it's worse than that where it's not even IPFS, it's literally
yeah,
like,
exactly. When you
but
can arbitrarily update what you're even referencing to, like, I mean, again, you the whoever has the access to do that can can play games. And again, like, what is your take on the I guess that other part I wanted to get your take on with Ether Lambos. And again, I'm just bringing this up because me personally, I was looking at getting one, and I've just been ruminating on the for a while. It's just been in the back of my mind about their ability to basically add features to the old ones too, and charge money for that. I'm not really comfortable with that. The more I think about it.
The I'd have to look at that part because I want to say the old contract, like I think the functionality for being able to do so was in the original contract. I don't know, like I don't have super strong feelings either way on that.
Yeah,
Without looking again, it's really the supply. The
yeah,
thing that I think is nice for them is they do have that, like it would literally be one call and they can fix that where like they have the ability to burn that functionality. So they can fix it. It's just a matter of getting that they just didn't. For them, I think they want to be able to mint more if they had a good enough reason to. But I just don't like the. And I'm not fudding. I just don't like the risk
yeah.
personally.
Yeah, I mean, and so I agree with you on the risk of the inflation. For me as a collector, though, like the thing that I've been kind of ruminating on, though, is that even for the ones that already have a fixed supply, from my understanding,
Oh, I get what you're saying. Like the
like,
customization was not
yeah,
there. Like the specific trait was not there
yeah,
back in the day. It
yeah,
was
exactly.
added. Yes. So that's one of the issues that I have with I I can't you're gonna know more than me. I don't know if it's the Namecoin stuff or the Bitcoin stuff. Or maybe it's Emblem Vault. I just remember seeing, like I was trying to play around to learn a little bit, and it just seemed really easy to upload like whatever I wanted for a token. And I didn't understand enough to be able to verify. Like I was like, if I had an image of this token that looks the same as these others, how do I know which ones are legit? And I did see JPJA.
Mhm.
He actually wrote a tool recently that provides like a list. Like we were able to verify the images were like whatever the data is, that it was from the
Mhm.
time that it said.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that kind of thing is just I guess what I'm saying is that I strongly agree with you. And then the other part of that too that people don't realize is like and a lot of this is also talking about OpenSea specifically, where it's so easy to just like there's just so much that you could change from a centralized point of view. I mean, I'll even give like an example of PixelMap that a lot of people had and I have mixed feelings too. I don't think I'll ever do it again, but trying to get back stolen tiles from a like a person hacked, trying to get their tile. That wasn't you, was it? No,
No, no, that wasn't me. That was someone else.
my mind's
It was the
blank.
guy who actually the guy who had the four tiles that I previously had before that 2x2. The guy who
Yes,
owned.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
My mind is blank, and I feel horrible because he's like the nicest guy ever. But he was hacked, and I wanted to help get his tiles back. So I can't change the image data because it's on chain, which is the whole point.
Mhm.
OpenSea, I can change. Like basically, you can give it the metadata that you like. I provide metadata to it so that when you update a tile, you can see the updated tile.
Mhm.
And I was able to show that those were stolen to try to get them back cheaper, and it sort of worked for some. Overall, I think it was probably not the best idea. And the part about that is it also shows what you can kind of do on OpenSea, and it also led me down to this train of thought of like, what happens if you have a like an evil dev that went to try to destroy the like say I did
Yeah.
that with every tile, what's that look like? And one of the things that like the TLDR of what would happen in that situation, I think, is that this kind of goes back to if you have a wrapped asset, how important it is to be able to unwrap. Because in that case, the community, like someone out there would make a new wrapper and everyone would just de-wrap and wrap to that, where it's pointing at the real asset. Like there's no way to change what's on chain. But if people were frustrated with what's being shown to OpenSea, you can kind of revolt as a community, if that makes sense. But in a perfect world, you wouldn't even be able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's very interesting. It's a very
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just something that's been rumbling in the back of my mind about the Ether Lambos stuff. And the more I thought about it, I don't like the ability to retroactively essentially change attributes and at the same time rarity. Like again, retroactively. So I don't know. I don't really like that. I don't know how their community feels about that, but it's I don't know. It's interesting. There's like you said, it's not like there's I mean, it's ultimately up to individuals to choose whether they think that's, if they think that's okay or not. The infinite supply potential is, I think, enormous. I mean, that's one of the biggest red flags you can have. And again, I'm not singling out Ether Lambos. This is just one that we were talking about the other day. So
To me, the rarity should always be something that's inherent to the
exactly.
contract. Like mooncats are a good example where the entire like makeup of them is stored on chain. Like I forget what they call it, but you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can't take an orange cat and it's a blue cat a different day because it was actually stored that way on the contract.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. I can't take a floor cat and change it into a day one cat just because I paid the dev 2 ETH, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
that's
Yep.
exactly that's kind of what they're doing. And the other aspect is they've done that once or twice. I mean, so if you bought one of either a floor one or one that's already modified, you don't have any assurance that also won't be then devalued by a further modification or whatnot, right? So I don't know. It's something that I just like less and less the more I think about it. So anyway,
Yep.
thanks for letting me chat about that. It's something that's been on my mind.
It's probably different for like for historical NFTs too versus a new NFT because our value proposition is different. Like for us collecting them, it's we like this because it was made so long ago, it was unique for these reasons, so we care about the history. Versus if you had a new NFT that launched today, if it had some kind of weird functionality added later, no one cares about the history behind it. So it's just not a I think it's a different standard that applies specifically for historicals, but I have the exact same, yeah, like for me, if it's not and that's how I feel about like there's lots of tokens that now have an image added onto them as of like 2021 or 2022, and I don't like it because to me when someone's trying to buy it, they're thinking like it's very different to think you're going to display this image or you're going to
Mhm.
display this token. Like we're going to do have like an integer in your metaverse that you're hanging on a wall. Like I that doesn't mean like I wouldn't want I'm not saying like very old tokens aren't unique or interesting. I just don't like them being marketed as like this image or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get you. Yeah, that's so for what if people aren't familiar with what some of the older NFT standards like counterparty and Doge party, I think is what you're referring to. You can like when you create a token, it's not how would I put it? The metadata, like the image isn't stored on chain. There's just metadata that you can update later. So there's a lot of these old tokens that people have held on to the rights within your counterparty wallet, and you can update that later. And they've updated these old tokens that were they're just blank tokens with a name, right? So all
Yep.
you were doing is almost like ENS. You were just registering a name, and you can update it later. And now people have added a picture to it and maybe a description. And people again, it's if you're not representing it as such, I think it's poor form. I mean, I bought a few of the golden shib or shibe, knowing that they were updated last year, just because it was like one of the only early Doge party assets that didn't have like a zillion supply that I had found at the time. I mean, I didn't go super hardcore into the Doge party stuff, but like one thing I thought was what or saw was common is those early tokens. I mean, again, it was like a meme, right? They just create like 100,000 or a million or
Yes.
whatever
Yeah.
zillion it is. So, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it should be clear and upfront to people that um, this image wasn't originally associated with it. Even if the intention was there at the time. You know.
A lot of them, it almost reminds me of like, say 10 years from now, we took all of our junk airdrop tokens and added images to them and said that they were like art pieces from back now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Or even taking like ICO tokens, but and they're actually image icon, that they used for
Oh,
for
yes.
market
Yeah.
cap or something, and calling that, like an art too. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. That just gave me the idea too. Maybe that's one thing I'll bring up to the curio cards people, is that might be actually an interesting thing for them to do. I don't know if it's feasible in terms of gas, but I know CryptoPunks, they took the step of actually, after the fact, they moved all of their image data on chain. And that might be something worth doing as a long-term provenance thing for curio cards too. Is they have 30 images, or 31 images. They could potentially put that on chain too. I don't know. It's an
That
idea.
they they technically could. That would be super expensive.
Would it?
They they could store like a, I mean, I guess wait for the right gas day and use a thumbnail. I think you could do it,
Okay.
but not a.
Not the
I
full.
don't know. It's just like if you were to store I don't know. I'd have to look at how much gas, like a curio card. If you look at how many pixels are in it versus like the entire pixel map, even if you use compression, picture paying the gas for every single tile, that would be similar to paying for like a high resolution crypto, like a curio card,
Okay, sure, yeah.
to store
I
on.
get you. Yeah.
But they could, yeah, even if it was just like a, do they store the like the checksum of the image on chain? I
They're
think.
using IPFS to link to the image files, from what I understand.
I mean, they could probably do like a thumbnail or something. I mean, there's actually the Apple curio card is at least preserved on chain because it's on PixelMap.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's funny. It'd be ironic if that's the way that they're on chain, as we as we just put them on pixel map tiles.
That's, yeah, that'd be really funny.
Yeah.
There's several Mooncats that are double on chain. Yeah, they're on chain now and they're on PixelMap.
Yeah, interesting. So I think that's kind of a good segue. So after you got reintroduced to PixelMap as an NFT, because you previously didn't know that, so you've become a little bit of an NFT collector yourself, and we kind of discussed it a little bit with the NFT archaeology. What do you value, and what is exciting to you about the vintage NFTs, and what do you look at to collect?
Um, Really good question. Yeah, I had to go through several phases. I went through like the why would anyone buy a JPEG to the like I really want another Mooncat. So it was a very large transition. But uh, I would say that there's a couple of things. One is the contract itself, in terms of is there any deal breaker? If there is, I generally am probably not interested. If it's something that I would consider like a red flag, which would be like unlimited supply or centralization or something like that. As long as there's not something that's like glaringly bad like that, the next thing would be how unique is it, or how unique was it at that time, and and I know this doesn't matter for like collecting purposes, but I really do have I place a very large amount of value on how I feel about the creator in terms of like my relationship with them, because I know most of them really well. And part of it for me, when I have something that they made in my wallet, it kind of feels like I'm supporting them, or like it's a it's not useful for me for like making money because I don't want to sell them at that point. But like using Pause as an example from Mooncat, she was one of the people that has basically um they were much more active earlier when NFTs took off, and she was much more knowledgeable, and she spent a ton of time helping me get like on my feet in this space. So like
Well,
whenever I
that's
look
really
at one of
nice.
my Mooncats, I'm like, it reminds me of just kind of all the help that I had from her, as well as I like that like the Pandaware team. The other part I would say is like, what is it? Like, is it something that I think is cool to kind of show off? I have no idea what it is about some projects. They just like they seem cool to me. Like they just like look cool. Like there's just something I don't know how you measure coolness. There's things where I see it, I'm like, that's not cool. But um I guess if it's pixelated, I probably like it more. That generally makes like if it reminds me of something nostalgic, I probably like it generally more. Just because that's something I really get into. Um, I would say like and then there's also com- I wouldn't say that community would be the thing that would drive me to get something, but community could be the reason why it would drive me away from something. So like
Yeah,
if you have no community or you have a good
toxic community.
community,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm okay with there not being one. But if there's one that I don't get along with, then I'm probably not going to get something of that. And that again is not about collecting. That's more of just like I do have my own emotions that kind of tie into the purchases. And then I also have two types of things that I get. I have things that I get because I want them in my collection and I actually like them. And then I have others where I'm getting them because I think I can make money off of them, and then generally lose money. So um, it's usually one of those two things. Um, and it's also like I don't know, like every now and then like I'll find something that's just really weird and unique, and I'm like, I don't understand it. Kind of like when you're talking about with like PixelMap, like it's so weird to me that the floor is not like freakishly high. I'm extremely biased when I think about like how early it is, but then I find other like one of the projects I just added to NFT archaeology I'd never heard about is called Deuce Eth. It was very early, and I've never seen anyone talk about it. I mean, someone has somewhere because I was able to find it, but I looked into it and it was like this really weird, like you had met these 50 little weird people. And then I think it's like each week they would have a TV episode where one would get killed off in like this comic kind of thing. And it was just such a weird, like it was really early, and it was just I was very surprised because there was nothing wrong with the contract. There's no I was surprised that more people, like no one has bought one, I think, in months. It was just very interesting to me. So like that's one where I was looking at maybe getting one, and that's like
Oh,
that
cool.
would be one that I would not buy that with the goal of making money because like there's no liquidity at the moment. So it's either a long hold or it's something that I just find super interesting, so I'd want to keep it. Um, or I'll find like I really like projects that are still doing something like adding stuff just because it's fun, like the Mooncat Boutique, for example. I think is super cool, or like
It's amazing what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, they have so much going on, and like beyond the new stuff, like even if you stripped all that away, just the Mooncats themselves are super cute and fun. I mean, what's not to
yeah,
like, right?
they're just like very endearing looking. It's very odd. They almost remind me of like a cat version of a Tamagotchi from back when I was little.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
and then there's like yeah, it's a that's a very long-winded way to answer the question, but it's a lot of different variables, but it's really um it's the age, it's if I how I feel about the creator or the community, um and just like if there's something really unique about it. Like the best way to make sure that I'm not interested is if I look at the contract and it's copy and pasted from someone else's contract. Like
Yeah.
that's But generally, I don't know. I'm not into that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There's such a wide range of what's out there too. I don't know, like you said, there's a bunch of stuff that I haven't even heard of that I'm still learning about. But like you said, there's such a wide range of like trash projects all the way to these ones that were really innovative and doing cool things. I don't know. There's room for pretty much anyone in any price range, at least still. I mean, we have some stuff like Pride Punks. I think you can get one for like $100 or $150 right now if you want. I mean, that's a cheap PFP all the way to like you said, PixelMap. I was also surprised that these aren't 5 or 10 F by now, but whatever. Again, I'm not obviously not a good trader either. So I mean, I guess what I'd say on my take is like I have my own thesis, and I think long term the high quality vintage NFTs. I think some of these won't perform that well. Some of the ones that I don't know, just there were cash grab efforts back then that aren't really well done, but these ones that were these ones that are legit, I think are going to be extraordinarily valuable. I think they're going to be nearly impossible to acquire in the future as well. Even when you're talking about PixelMap, we're talking about a total supply of 4,000 and change. With who knows how many are lost too, right? I mean, that's less. I mean, what the size of a 4,000 person small town is. I mean, we're talking globally, right? I mean, it's
And that's if everyone has just one. Yeah, it's a
exactly, yeah.
small.
And good
Yep.
luck trying to get mine because mine aren't for sale. So so that's 9 that are evaporated from the supply, and that's part of how I look at the what I look at with NFTs is you're going to have more and more turbo nerds like myself that the vast majority of what I am acquiring, I have like no intention of selling at any price. So that supply is evaporated for good, unless I don't know, most of my stuff, it's unless I have a duplicate, I just don't intend to sell, because the way I view it is, I'm not really great at timing stuff, but there's going to come a point where, yeah, if you sell some of the stuff, you can't buy back in, and that's it. Because I think some of the stuff is
Mine's a threshold. Like
yeah.
I'll probably hold it, but like I have 9 moon-cats right now. If they ever go up to 1 million each, I will print off a picture of my moon-cat and I will be sad. But like I think 1 million, I might give in. It's that floor. But no, I know what you mean. Like it's one of those things too where I think it's kind of the other direction too. Like I recently we've had kind of where crypto NFT, well, life in general, stock market, like everything has been going down lately at the moment, and that like if you were like the NFTs that I treat as flipping, those are the kind of things where like I want to offload them and I'd rather have the ETH in my wallet. When I have something that I actually like collecting and it goes down in price, I have even less reason to want to sell it. It's not like
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I do.
yeah. So I really think that if a project has like legitimate legs to stand on, and if you look at a lot of these historical NFTs, even when we have these big crashes, which we did at the end of December as well, they still generally like they don't spike up as much as new NFTs, but they don't spike down as much either overall. It seems like it just feels like it's a much more stable-ish. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and what I think we're seeing too, Ken, like longer term, is there's a very small number of people that are in the vintage NFT space. I mean, like NFTs in general is still relatively small. I was looking at doing the research for article I wrote in last year. It was like less than 1 million active traders, active people who had done a single transaction on OpenSea as December of last year. So, you have multiple people who have multiple wallets. So it's under 1 million as of December of last year. and that's for everything. So the vintage market is going to be what, 2,000-3,000 people probably. It's enormously tiny. I just see that.
I think we know every single person. Like,
Yeah, probably.
it's yeah, it's a very small, close-knit space right now.
Yeah, so I see that, I see as these, essentially there's not enough liquidity, like for the individual collectors that are already here, and the pool of collectors isn't large enough that we still have these big waves in the NFT in the vintage space. But what I see happening longer term is, instead of having this kind of like wave form, like it's going to be start to flatten out, and it's going to start eventually tilting up and to the right, just because there's people like myself. I'm just, what I can afford to, I'm just hoovering up, and again, even if we cycle down, that's not hitting the market. So, you know, add in additional collectors coming in. And I think, well, I guess the other thing that we can talk about too is that, people have different motivations for buying. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with buying in to sell later at a profit. I mean, that's part of what's been has driven some of these cycles. But I mean, longer term, I think that we'll have a better mix of people that are just, and part of that, you get emotionally attached to some of these too, as dumb as that sounds. So
That's the problem. Like, yeah, I think my collecting probably not. I would say it almost certainly started with me thinking that I could probably make more off of what I was buying, and then yeah, that whole problem of like you end up liking what you have, and then it's like, yeah, you're not gonna make money off of it because you don't want to sell it.
it's funny. I could have traded my CryptoPunk for a lot of things last year when the CryptoPunks took off first, and I held. I could have even gotten a full set of curio cards or something for it, but I held, and I'm still holding my punk, and I don't intend to sell that either, because when I bought it, I bought it because I saw I started to understand the thesis that some of these guys had, and I just wanted to own one before I was priced out, and that's exactly what ended up happening. I mean, punks are expensive, and unless you have a lot of money, you can't buy a punk now. So, yeah, but it's interesting to see it play out. But yeah, I think we'll see more and more of this stuff get hoovered up, and it'll be, again, I think for a lot of this stuff, it'll be, it'll probably be a few years out, but right now it's easy to go for go look at any of these vintage projects, and there's a decent amount of available supply. But I don't think that's going to be the case, in the not too distant future, where, I see for a lot of these top tier NFTs and projects, you're going to need to know someone, or hit up a broker or someone, again, just to even get someone willing to talk to you about selling, because a lot of these are going to be going into permanent homes.
Yeah, it's yeah. Like I think at some point, like you have projects where they don't have liquidity because there's not enough buyers, but I think that you also cross into where you'll have projects that don't have liquidity because there's no sellers. So it's just a very different, yeah,
Well,
it's totally about how many people want the thing.
yeah, it'll be the opposite of a liquidity crisis, is an availability crisis. And that's what I think is we're going to see, as these supply shocks, where um, you can still get some of these top tier ones that are like, like the Nakamoto rare Pepe. You can still get like an FD card. You can still get like Ethereum and PixelMap, and some of the early Namecoin assets. You can still get them. Like, there's always one listed, but for some of these, there's again, like the Nakamoto, there's 300 that were created initially, and I don't know what, there's probably 270 remaining, and at any one time there's only like 5 to 15 for sale. Again, it's going to take a lot more money probably for the remaining people to unload. So, but a lot of this stuff, it'll just get, I think when it does start to move, it'll get explosive. So,
oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. Is there oh, go ahead.
Oh, that was it.
Sorry. Yeah. Is there anything else that excites you about the vintage space going forward, or is there anything that you're looking forward to?
I think just a the space maturing in terms of like it. I think at a certain point it'll be it's very fun to have the archaeology piece of like digging up more old things and finding out what's there and all of that. But I think at some point that will end up like there's a limit to how many things can be dug up. Like
Yeah.
once that's been exhausted, um, I think being able to categorize and sort those things and having like a just making the space a lot more professional, or like if you look at buying an antique or something, like say you go Sotheby's and you're looking at like a physical antique, you see like, oh, this is from this era, created by like having all of that information available, kind of like you know what I mean, just having a very understanding the historical NFT space is still there's so much mystery about it that hasn't been ironed out, and there's not like we all have arguments constantly to try to figure out what the standards and everything should look like. And I'm looking forward to what those end up being. Like what is like how do you judge an earlier NFT? Like what are you looking for? What I mean, there's the things that we all look for, like what's the supply, or like what's the age, things like that. But I think there's going to be a lot more factors that people are like kind of dig into and start sharing. They kind of evolve over time. I'm just interested to see what it ends up being.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a great point. I think we have to be pretty close to the end of discoveries on Ethereum, just because the economic incentives for people to have, for turbo nerds to have like poured through every contract. There, I mean, I'm not joking. I mean, I mean, there's big money in some of these projects that people have rediscovered. So the economic incentives are there. So I don't think we're going to see much left on ETH. The most recent that I was aware of were like there are some Namecoin assets that were rediscovered. What was it, earlier this year, late last year, the like puny codes, which were the you know, it's an interesting, like the Namecoin stuff is, as far as I'm aware, and probably will be the earliest NFTs or Namecoin domains. You know, like 2011 is the first year that, like, Namecoin is, from what I understand, the first Bitcoin fork. You know, and they created that decentralized DNS system. So they had like these .bit domains, which is like the predecessor to ENS domains. So those are, as far as like going by, if you want to go by standards, that's, as far as I'm aware, those are the first NFTs that we know of. And what's interesting is like puny codes. You know, it's, what's interesting is it's a way of encoding like visual information into the name that gets transposed into you know, into different characters. So it's like the first implementation of like all the elements of a art NFT. You know, I mean, you can argue whether or not some of those are art, but it's the first implementation of all of that. You know, all of those elements. I think that's an interesting step in the you know, in the evolution of NFTs too. That, so I you know, there was some other stuff that was discovered on Namecoin and a couple other chains, like someone found like the what was it, like the Book of Matthew, someone had encoded into the Namecoin blockchain. And
Oh,
I don't
that's
know, there's just,
crazy.
yeah, it's just really crazy. But I like you, I have to think we're close to the end of these rediscoveries, and I think that this will like you're saying, bring some stability and allow things to kind of like you said, mature and even out, where we don't have people that are trying to go out there and cowboy and corner 50% of the supply, and then you know, do an announcement and dump on people's heads or whatever it is. You know?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
And
then
oh, go ahead.
then I was just, it's strictly going to be on the merits, you know, and with the information that, you know, people like you help provide by auditing these contracts, and we can, you know, come to a consensus on what we're even looking at, you know.
That and there I don't know what you would call them, but I feel like we'll have different terms, more than just NFT, but like for different types of NFTs. Like
Yeah.
If there's no contract, what do you call it? If there is one, what do you call it? If it's on, I mean, like the NFT is so broad. I guess what I'm saying is like, I just feel like we'll end up having categories for different things to make it easier to know, like, you, are you like a Pepe's, like that seems like
Mhm.
a very specific specialty. It's a very specific niche. I mean, they actually do have a name like Pepe's, but I think there's going to be categories or like it, it's very hard to answer the question right now when someone says, what was the first NFT to do X? To
Yeah.
get the answer truthfully is very hard. And I think in the future, it'll be much easier to have like, oh, this has been verified and studied. This is the first that did this thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and I think the other thing I'm looking forward to is as this becomes more standard and codified and understood, you know, again, like people will be able to look objectively and see that it's a maturation and different steps of technology. They're just different. We have different token standards and different ages of the stuff, but they're all, you know, not all of them. Terra is not, but but we have all of these, just all these different ways of implementations of technology to get towards the same goal. And like you said, even within Ethereum, there's just so many different ways of doing the same thing. So there's a lot of richness there to be fleshed out.
I one other thing I think like I don't know if this will happen, but I think would be good or may happen is that if you look at some historical NFT projects, several will have like a very low supply. Like you might have on the lowest end, it's a one of one, obviously, but it could be something where there's only 20 or 30 of that thing.
Yeah.
And that makes it incredibly hard to have a community form around it because at the most you have maybe 20 holders. And I think that as more people are drawn to historical NFTs, it'll be less like if I own a Mooncat right now, the best place to talk about that is going to be the Mooncat Discord. Like that's where people that care about them are. But I think a Discord that is moderated well, that's friendly, that is like instead of treating those collections that just have 20 items as like its own little island on its own, it's like, oh, that's part of historical NFT. Like, you know what I mean? Like the
I get you.
community
Yeah.
being bigger and enveloping more NFTs than just like one collection per community.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, exactly. Mhm. Yeah, having like instead of having everything broken out into their little Discord fiefdoms, part of the bigger. Yeah, I get you. I mean, not to say that those still won't exist, but most of the main action will probably be taking place in these more specific to a theme or even the whole vintage space, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say you could have like you sign in with Collab Land that gives you the roles, but like yours
Oh
would
my
be
God.
like CryptoPunk Mooncat Curious, like it'd be a
I
very
just went
long title.
it's funny. I just went through. I don't sign anything with my Vault account anymore, but because I already signed up with Collabland, I don't know,
Oh,
last
gotcha,
year. Last
gotcha.
year, I can let it verify stuff without signing with my account anymore. And I just went through all these different communities and added the verified roles. So yeah, I have quite a few. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, if it was on one Discord, you would have like it'd be a little rainbow roll of like everything. That's funny.
Power nerd. Yeah, it's funny. No, but I think it's I'm glad that for the most part, and we're still working at it, is trying to keep the space clean and have some integrity for I'd like to see, like, on a couple angles. Like, one is I want to see like you said, some verifiable info, like reliable information for new people coming in. And I like to, like, we're slowly starting to see that as more collaboration between the different like communities and holders, because at least initially early on, we had these almost, and again, not to say that them having their own like communities is bad, but like not having an adversarial relationship with each other. I think over time, and I'm trying to contribute to that, but that we will see the vintage space grow larger with cooperation and mutual respect than like some of the early turf war stuff of like, mine's the only thing of
Yep.
X, and is the only thing that's valuable type thing. So
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's and I think to your point, that's also one of those things where once it matures, where it's very obvious what is the first at something, then you're not going to have 5 different projects trying to fight over that because it's already been answered.
yeah, and the other thing that's going to be interesting too is there's some first of that, like, will anyone care, right? Like,
Yes.
like, what I mean?
Yes.
There's
Like
some really
make it
esoteric, like,
arbitrary. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like there's a couple that I know about that they're first in their thing, but like, will the market care? Probably not. But I mean, it's a thing, right? So
Yeah, you
yeah,
could take any NFT and make it the first of something. It's
yeah,
really figuring out what those categories are. And I don't think I am not a big person on thinking that the knockoff of the knockoff of the knockoff is going to be worth that much money. Like I
yeah,
really think it's going to be what was first, what was second, like that kind of thing. It's not or what's unique. Like
yeah. I
I don't
agree.
know.
I think long term, I think what we'll see massively outperform, or like you said, are the technical firsts, or like something that was groundbreaking. Like I see, like like um like Ethereum is going to be, I think, will probably be huge long term. I know it's kind of slept on right now, but the being like Ethereum being the platform that everyone uses for NFTs, and it being the absolute first. I mean, it's also super cool too. I mean, PixelMap I also love, but as a first, like the Nakamoto card, I think is going to be enormous, because Rare Pepe's not just being early, but that the first, like, that really community engagement and contribution is such a really diverse and wild project and fun project. So I think that's going to be a big one. Maybe some of the like, I'm betting that some of the early name coin assets are going to be big too. There's so many, like the FD card, I think, is, being the first Spells of Genesis card, will probably be big. I mean, curio cards, I think, are big, but but the other thing too is that there's enough room out there for people that are just into like a really obscure niche that they can find something there that maybe we aren't like super passionate about. So
I'm really mind blown when I think about it. Sue Squares being the first ERC 721. It is so weird to me that that's not like, yeah, you would think, you know what I mean? Like I would just think that that would be snatched up like crazy. Like
mhm.
I love the pre ERC 721 stuff because I'm biased, obviously, but like if you look at 99, I mean, I'm exaggerating, percent of NFTs being ERC 721, you would think the very first one of those would be something that would just be crazy. I
Yeah,
don't know. It's I think it also goes back to like there's just so few that know about historical NFTs right now. Like it's still such a small group.
yeah. The other thing that's interesting too is that what we've kind of observed too, or what I've observed, is that you know there's some projects that are either kind of known or relatively unknown, that just because they haven't had like anyone hyping them, but they
Yes.
just don't, it's interesting. So yeah, point taken. Like you said, there's one or two that I hold that are just super under the radar that no one cares about, that I think are cool, but
That's
you
how I
know,
feel about my crypto cats. Like it's
yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, the supply is so low on those. I mean,
yeah, and their website is cool because you see the little
yeah,
cat like jumping around and stuff, and it's like there's
I was
hardly
part of
any,
the I was
yeah.
part of the rediscovery on that. I claimed two, or I shouldn't say claim, I bought two and I sold one. I still have one in my that what's funny is during the when people rediscovered that, everyone aped in all at once and that website crashed in like 30 seconds.
Oh, I that is not surprising. That's I didn't even have the PixelMap site up until like a week later, so I completely understand. It's
I mean,
that's
you have to
funny.
imagine that that was probably running on the cheapest web host that they could, like the cheapest plan, because it
It's
probably had
a
no traffic.
Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, probably had no traffic for years, and then just all of these apes just swarm in trying to clean it out.
I think Cyrus said the Ethereum website is on a Raspberry Pi sitting in his kitchen.
No way. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
funny.
pretty sure I know it's a Raspberry Pi. I'm pretty sure it's his kitchen. Um and he has good uptime. So like I'm not gonna like I mean it works. And that's a very easy host to replace if you need to.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of Ethereum, I know it takes a little while to render client side. Is that due to like the 3D graphics on the client, or is that on the server side, or do you know?
I don't know. I'm almost certain it's client side, but I'm
Yeah,
not positive.
it's a very
Prior,
complex. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he even has like fancy lighting. Like it's really cool. It like prior to like how you can see all four on the map at once. That really hit it performance wise. Prior to that, it was so smooth. I don't know. I imagine it's client side, but like I don't even know where to like I top out at 2D, and 2D is plenty complex for me. So 3D, I have no idea how it's done.
I just had to update the I just used the I'm working with Laudao, and they purchased a
Oh
Ethereum
yeah,
point,
yeah.
and I just went through the process of using the tooling to create the image on the tile that kind of advertises Laudao's logo,
Is
which is a
that
little.
the voxelizer? Is that what you use for
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I was using the voxelizer, and the tools that they have for Ethereum are also really cool. I mean, I was able to, so I'm a noob in Photoshop, but I was able to take an image of like the logo for Laudao and like trim that out, and then you have to like tweak it to a certain percentage, and then you toss it into the voxelizer, and then it generates like I was able to put it vertically, and you're able to generate the 3D, you know, the 3D mapping that it'll actually populate and on on the map, which is super cool. I mean that I don't know, it's way cool.
The fact that those like the entire thing that you put on there is stored on chain, where you have that on every single Ethereum node is crazy. It's just
It is.
it's cool.
Yeah. So well, let me think. Is there anything else you wanted to speak to, or anywhere else you wanted to go with this? We've covered a lot of topics.
I think that's it for me. Yeah, that was a really good variety.
Yeah, cool. Well, I certainly appreciate you joining me today. This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.